What's up, Ina Bay, and you're watching Bay's channel. Hello, and on today's episode, the plant of the week is my beautiful basket. I'm gonna call it a basket today of Darcenas, and I will go grab it right now. This is the moment. There are 3 different types in here. This one is taking over at the moment, but don't let this one fool you or that one. They do what they please. They do as they please. I just repotted it and had to move it because of how big it is. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about delivery. I mentioned it a couple videos back, and I thought it'd be a good topic. I do, again, have notes on the side if I need them, just because I like to keep my thoughts in order, or I feel like I forget to say things. But delivery is very important, especially when you're communicating with someone who is important to you or closer than most people, because the closer you are, the more likely you are to hurt that person emotionally. And I don't mean in the sense of malice, maliciousness. I mean in the sense of not realizing you're hurting that person by saying things a certain way or doing things a certain way. So, what is delivery? Like, what are you talking about? Delivery is the way that you say a certain thing, the way that you are saying it tone-wise, the way that you are saying it in the sense of the words, the particular words you're using, because yes, that can be offensive sometimes. The way that you are phrasing the sentence, it's all of it. The way that you approach a situation, basically. If you deliver something wrong, it can have a whole different turnout than what you had in your head or the expected idea. The reason being is that we all have different interpretations of words and how we grew up understanding them. We have different processing systems. I mentioned this previously on one, if not all, of my platforms. We grew up and life taught us things in different ways, and not everyone has the same lessons that you've been taught, which means the way that you would understand something is not the same way that the next person would understand something, because they learn things differently. So understanding that and understanding with whom you're speaking to, because sometimes what's cool with your friends isn't cool with your partner, or what's cool with your specific friend group over there isn't cool with these friend groups. And that is because there's different settings for different situations, and sometimes it's just not the right time. If you're feeling very high energy in the sense of sad or mad, sometimes you need a moment to collect yourself and your thoughts and what you would like to say and how you would like to say it before speaking about it. Taking a moment to really figure out, like I mentioned, I think, in one of my previous videos, what you actually want to say. Because in moments of emotional outburst, we can tend to go for the jugular, or in a less violent term, hit below the belt. That's still violent, I just realized that. In a less aggressive term, we go for what hurts that person most, because we know their deepest traumas, or we know what would emotionally affect them, and that's not healthy. Because then you put an emotional defensive wall up for the person you're speaking to. So you're speaking like this, and then suddenly you say something that you know would hurt their feelings. Now they're not listening to anything, totally blindsided, and now only are listening to defend themselves or attack you back, which is not a way to have a healthy conversation. It is an interesting one, and a lot of emotions may rise from that, but I would not recommend them. So gathering yourself, figuring out what you want to say, how you want to say it, and with whom you're saying it to will help you understand how to approach a situation. If it's more of a deep conversation, you will have to find a correct time. Sometimes when people have just had long days, they don't want to come home and talk deeply about how things affect you, and it has nothing to do with you in that moment. Sometimes you just need the right environment, and you may hear that a lot in relationships when people say this isn't the time to talk about it. Sometimes they're correct, sometimes they're being controlling, but sometimes they're correct. Because there is a time and a place and a way to say things, and if we are unaware of that, we will find ourselves in altercations, whether that's emotional, physical, or I was gonna say spiritual, but emotional and physical are the main ones, which leads to resentment, and resentment doesn't allow you to communicate what you're saying. So unpacking it with yourself before you go and talk to them. And sometimes things don't need to be said. I was listening to Shan Boodram from YouTube. She also does podcasts, but she said a while back that she has a rule that not everything needs to be said in her marriage, which I was like, that's so important. Sometimes we find ourselves just saying things that are irritating us, but over and over, which, don't get me wrong, advocate for your needs, but when it tends to be repetitive and nagging for things that actually don't need to be said, for example, if something is bothering you, like the way that someone's doing something, or something you know is irrationally irritating you, figuring out how to deal with that on your own. You don't have to communicate every dislike you have in a person, especially if it doesn't actually affect you. Like if it's just something that irritates you for some reason, you can't explain it. It doesn't have to be said. They both touch on similar topics, obviously, because they both are in the same realm of teaching or researching. I don't know how you'd say that, but they both teach how to approach a situation. Sometimes we have expectations in the conversation before it even starts. So not having expectations or a blueprint for that person to follow in a conversation is important as well. I was saying something else, but I totally forgot it, so I guess it's fine. It'll come back to me eventually. They were both talking about making space for that person, but no, I can't remember it, but totally fine. I can always do a update video or a elaboration for future content. It's never an issue. So understand how you're delivering your conversation, if it needs to be delivered, or if it's just an internal problem that you need to face on your own, and ask yourself, is this a necessary conversation we need to have? Because if it's not, you don't have to bring it up. I'm not saying to hide your emotions or what's bothering you. I mean in the sense of irrational reasoning. If it's something that won't be resolved through communication, then it's not really something you need to bring up, is what I was getting at. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video with my beautiful Darcinas. These pots are great. This is from Walmart, actually. Obsessed with them. And do you have a tendency to deliver messages incorrectly?